What's going on, comic book movie fans? My name's Jonathan. This is Comic Book Cinema. Today I'm joined by Daisy and Jason. I got their info down below. You can check out Daisy's website. He does some cool designs, and you can check out Jason G over at Spotify and many other places to find podcasts. Today we're going to get right into things. We're going to talk a little bit about our comic book movies becoming too woke. Are movies in general becoming too woke? Some people hate that term. They think that that term is associated with the far right, the extreme right. I honestly think that the word does get thrown around a lot these days for a lot of things that possibly might not apply. But at the end of the day, I can see why the word has arisen, I guess you could say, because we live in a world where political correctness and checking off boxes on a checklist become more important oftentimes in films, not just in films, but in everyday life. But we're not talking about everyday life. We're talking about comic book movies because this is comic book cinema. But, it's like we want to put this movie out and we want to make sure that we have a Native American. We want to make sure that we have a lesbian. We also want to make sure that we have a paraplegic just to please the paraplegic audience as well. It's like all these check boxes have to be like checked off for each movie, not to serve the story better, not to further the story in any shape or form, just because basically at the end of the day, we're checking off a checkbox. And I think that at the end of the day, it's done for all the wrong reasons. And that's why when you saw things like this in the past, at least in my opinion, that it was better received. The gay couple and Big Daddy were funny. They were funny. And they made the movie a better film. Honestly, they made the movie more funny. They were very comedic together. It served the purpose of that film at the end of the day. Here, when we look at things like changing of a character like Korg to, we're changing his backstory, even though we already slightly established that in the last film. Granted, he's a side character. He's not really that important of a character anyway, but we're changing everything about this character just to check off a box. Am I wrong, guys? What do you guys think about this?
With the Korg example, I'm gonna be completely honest. I had so many problems with that movie before we even got to that. I had checked out. By like the third time I saw the screaming goats, I was done. Like I was just like in this movie.
I actually like the film. I think the film is overall not as bad as everyone thinks it is, but that's just me.
For the most part, it's not really that big a deal to me. I just kind of like sometimes I'm like, oh, I know what that was for, and I don't let it. Like I said, my problems with Thor: Love and Thunder were infinite before we got to that point, because that's kind of late in the game when we find that out about Korg and his dads or whatever. Like I said, it's such a small part of the movie. It's not like they're making like Marvel or DC presents Bros or something like that. You know what I mean?
The problem I begin to have is when you have more of a lean towards inclusion versus content. Like as far as if it is a part of the original creation of the content, that's fine. But if you have to force it in just to be an inclusionary detail, then I think that's unnecessary. We all live in the same exact world. It's inclusive in our culture anyways. Why do we have to apply those same things? When it comes to storylines and all of those things, why does it seem so forced and not more natural? It's kind of my biggest stance, right along with the word woke and how it's thrown around so easily nowadays. Around the same time, we got cancel culture. For those who kind of established the woke narrative, also you have the same cancel culture, and it's where, for instance, this video in and of itself, by the end of it and by the time if it gets any traction, we could fall into that same cancel culture. We spoke too much about beliefs, but that's the thing. The fun part about this, even the last video that we did, Jason, we didn't all completely agree on the video. or the movie.
Not at all.
But that's the beautiful thing about it. The diversity of opinion is the beautiful thing, is that we don't have to agree. We can agree to disagree and still enjoy that. Like that's the fun of it. That shouldn't have to be the line drawn in the sand. And I think that's kind of where the separating things happening in this agenda is that when the line's drawn, it's like you're either here or there. If you're there, you can't be here. Does that make sense? There's no hand in hand in that, and that's kind of this frustrating thing for me.
A lot of like the controversy that comes up with these movies, it happens before the movie actually comes out, which means that people are on either side. Like either people love it or they hate it before they even go into the movie. And you can't see if it really like affects the story. When people are mad about stuff before they even see the movie, I have a problem with that. Or they love something before they even see it. Everybody was super mad about the fact that America, whatever her name is, in Doctor Strange, had 2 moms. But that was such a small point of the movie. If that's going to ruin your entire view of the movie, or if you're going in it watching for that small story beat, then what are you doing? And if you love it because of that story beat, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like on either side, it's ridiculous. Like, you just need to go into a story and watch the story.
I can agree from that perspective. When people crucify a film because of the day and age, this woke era that we live in, when they crucify a film when it's not that far off from original content. So, like, when you think about in the world of DC, you think about the Mascara, and this is an island of nothing but Amazonian women. You don't have those same people didn't crucify Wonder Woman. Now, again, there's a way of reproduction, clearly, but at the same time, what I'm saying is like those same people said nothing in that moment, but they said it with America Chavez's origin story. The part about it is people pick and choose what they say is right or wrong or what fits the current narrative. And the thing about movies is they're the arts, man. They're a free form of entertainment. I have a lot of friends who didn't really appreciate the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness because there was what some would consider a demonic flair. I tried to explain to many of them, like, when you read the source material, it's not far off.
That's what it is, yeah.
And so I would suggest to those who have the biggest say-so about the movies, just look at the source material, and if it's if you, based off of the original source material versus what they created, if there's a lot of these additives that were unnecessary, absolutely. The biggest things, just like Korg's narrative, why did it have to change? It was already established. So like things like that, if it doesn't meet the source material and you added it just for inclusion, I don't think that's necessary. I think you're diluting the possibility of how much further a film could go.
With your agenda.
Yes.
And I also think, man, social media has made us all way worse human beings anyway. But like, it just takes a Fox News or an MSNBC to write either a positive piece or a negative piece, and it gets shared on Facebook about a film that hadn't even come out yet. And you've got people who are never going to watch Thor: Love and Thunder
that haven't done any research on it,
chiming in on something, or someone who was never going to go see Multiverse of Madness chiming in on how it's the most important film ever. And it's just like, it's such a weird time that we live in.
Movies have changed a lot, though. I would say that in general, with language, with the dirtiness, with the humor, the dark humor, the sexual humor, whatever you want to call it, the nudity that we see on screen, which for years or for decades in Europe and other countries, nudity hasn't been as big of a deal as it is to us in America culturally. I don't know. I think at the end of the day that a lot of these agendas are getting pushed to push the agenda rather than to, like we said, make the story a better story, make the movie better. Not to mention, like Daisy talked about, it's breaking away from the source material, which in some cases I do not mind.
I know you don't.
Yeah, I don't. I really don't. Like, I don't mind, when they released the X-Men at the time in 2000. I didn't mind them putting them in the leather black suits. Now, in retrospect, I think that it could have been cooler with the classic yellow and blue. But I don't mind some liberties being taken here and there. But when you start changing everything about these characters, or changing their sexuality just to fit a narrative, or whatever the case may be, it's just an agenda at the end of the day. And it's almost like I feel like some studios or directors or both like to throw those agendas in their film because they feel like in this day and age, in the cancel culture era, they can put their movie out, and if people talk crap about it, then, oh, well, you must be a bigot if you hate this movie because it has a gay character in it. And if you don't like gay characters, then you're homophobic. It turns into name calling as opposed to us having conversations. Yeah. And if someone does agree with that lifestyle, have a conversation about it. Don't, shout someone down. And the same for the other side, let's just have these conversations. And if we can't agree at the end of the day, there's no need in us, trying to cancel someone or, getting upset about it. That's not going to change their opinion at the end of the day. You can, do whatever you want to that person. At the end of the day, especially canceling someone or trying to get their job or to get their whatever else, get them kicked off of TV or YouTube, like that. At the end of the day, that's just going to make that person more spiteful. And we can try to find some type of middle ground, I feel like. And at the end of the day, you're never going to agree with me on everything, Jason, and same with you, Daisy. But we can always try to find that middle ground. We do agree with each other on a lot more things than most people do in today's day and age. But we would be a better country if we just tried to find some type of middle ground. And like I said, it's okay to agree to disagree. Just because someone doesn't agree with your core political beliefs doesn't mean you shouldn't associate with that person or never speak with them again. I can't believe that person doesn't agree with gay marriage, or I can't believe that person, whatever else, doesn't think that marijuana should be legalized. I don't know what your core beliefs are, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I think that we could probably all benefit from trying to find what we all have in common.
I would agree. One of the problems is today, especially Jason made a good point earlier that, the social media era, it was intended to draw people together, but it's now the separating divider that really pushes people apart. With cancel culture, how James Gunn lost a job for a couple of years because of things he said years ago. We say we're a free country and we have free speech, but technically we don't, because we can be crucified for things we said years ago or things that may no longer be our opinion. Just as, a movie rating, we might feel it's a 9 this year, and next year it might be a 7. Our mindsets change as we grow older and as we go through life. You just can't hold people accountable for things they used to say or used to be. That's the part about this quote unquote woke era, is that it's let's dissect your entire life. You're in your 50s or your 60s now, but I'm going to hold you accountable for something that you did in your teens or your 20s. You're not allowing me to grow. You're assuming that there was no growth and I'm the same person then. That's a poor part about this, because again, like I said earlier, movies and the silver screen is freeform art. It's what I write my story as a writer. That's the story. You don't have the freedom to pick it apart because it's art. That's like saying, looking at a Picasso painting and said, you shouldn't have done that. Like, does that make sense? Like, it's just, I don't know. I think it's too easy for people to reach in and pick things apart and just not allow it to be. On the same hand, it's the not just picking apart, but it's like Hollywood has this umbrella of, we're watching you. You better make sure you include something from our agenda. You got to hit all these bullet points or we're going to crucify you.
Yeah, and it's almost like there's a double standard, and oftentimes as well. We were just talking about Ezra Miller in our last video. We don't know. We don't know if this guy's actually guilty of these crimes, but let's just say this. It would be very unlikely that he was not guilty, because this guy has been arrested multiple times for multiple different incidents. And we have video footage of this man throwing a girl down outside of a bar. I forget where it was, maybe Amsterdam, Sweden, somewhere like that. but he literally like grabbed this girl by the throat and threw her on the ground. And this was 3-4 years ago. There's alleged, really crazy behavior that's come out from lots of different arrests in the past couple years for this guy. On top of all of that lies some possible kidnapping charges and grooming charges, among others. So I honestly
There's also
have no
a cult.
sympathy.
There's a cult in Iceland or something.
Yeah, I honestly have no sympathy for, someone that, if convicted, that I just have, like I said, I have no sympathy for someone like that. And the fact that they, him, her, whatever you want to call him, is allowed to come in for reshoots on a film with such heavy, crazy allegations pending is mind-boggling to me. And I don't think that there would be the same standards in place if it was a straight white male, especially a conservative straight white male. It's like there's a double standard there.
Yeah.
If that side slips up, the side of the straight white male, heaven forbid, they say anything negative about a female or, a gay character or whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, I think you're right, Daisy. We really, truly don't have freedom of speech anymore. If you have to worry about losing your job or getting silenced on your radio show or your podcast or whatever, it's a double standard and it's not fair. If you don't agree with me, if you want to come on this show and have a discussion about it, I would love to have you on. Anyone that has an opposing opinion. We had 2 people lined up for this show that were on the other side of things. Both of them, for whatever reason, it didn't work out and they weren't able to join us. So, I'm longing to have discussions like this on this channel. I think that that's, at the end of the day, how we gain, at the very least, a better understanding of where we're coming from. And we probably won't agree with each other. It's not like we're going to pat each other on the back at the end of the video and say, you know what, Jonathan, you were right. Or me saying, you know what, nameless person, you were right. It's just going to be a discussion and a debate. And at the end of the day, like I said, maybe we can have a little bit more appreciation for each other's opinions. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Once again, guys, ladies and gentlemen, Dacey's info as well as Jason G's info will be displayed below. Check them out. They got lots of cool stuff going on. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Real Comic Book Cinema, as well as Facebook. Until next time, have a great day.